Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny. I am so happy today to be joined by one of the best safeties in the NFL, Huskies legend. We're going to talk about it a little bit. 7-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, Budda Baker. Welcome to the show.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm better now that you're here. I feel like we met in person for the first time at a Pro Bowl, if I remember correctly, maybe back when it was in Vegas. And I was thinking about a conversation we had where I was like, Budda, once again, you're the only Cardinal here and kind of all by your lonesome. And you've been through so much with that team for so long. You've been through rebuilding years. Yeah. You have to be the only person from your draft, which I believe was 2017, if I remember correctly, right? But I even look back at like 2020 is when y'all drafted Kyler Murray. And I look back at that roster completely different other than like you and Kyler, right? And I wanted to start there. Like, what is it like being on a team that is just completely turned over to the extent that yours has?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through many turnarounds, but I definitely think that this coaching staff, these guys are real, great guys. And it was a new coach every year for my first 3 years, and then was able to have Cliff Kingsbury for, a few years, 4 years, I believe. And now we're on to the JG, and Jonathan Gannon, of course. And, that's where we're at.
You're the last man standing. You mentioned that you feel good about this new regime, if you will. Is that what made you feel comfortable signing an extension this past season? Because, sometimes with a player like yourself, who's been so good for so long, there can be like hey, I want to go win a Super Bowl. I want to be on, this kind of team. In the past, you've requested trades, but you felt comfortable staying in Arizona. I was wondering why.
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, I was drafted here. I know it was different GM and different coaching staff, but for me, all I've been trying to do is do my job at a high level each and every day. Of course, I'm a sore loser. I hate losing, and my career with the Cardinals, I've kind of been, more losing than winning. But for me, it's just to, stay 10 toes down, believe in what you believe in. I believe this coaching staff. I believe in these players that we brought in, free agency, draft. Very excited for the future, and just don't want to tell you too much yet, but
okay,
very excited.
Well, you mentioned that like the scheme's changed a lot, and I texted you last week, and I was like, dude, I'm watching the Cardinals defense right now to prepare for this interview, and it's insane. Yeah. I don't think maybe the world knew, or it wasn't something, certainly not something we hand out. We talked about that much on NFL Live, but like it is one of the more interesting, it was last year, really one of the more interesting and unusual defenses in the NFL. To put it simply, you were really the straw that stirs the drink in that insane scheme. Because I think your defensive coordinator, Nick Rallis, who I'm going to ask you a little bit about later, deployed you in every possible way a football player could be used. It's like in a single series, you would be in the box, then suddenly you'd be running the pole. It's a 3 safety group. Then on the next down, you're blitzing through the A gap, and then suddenly you're dropping a free safety. So I was wondering how it was for you playing all those different roles and how it differed from how you were used earlier in your career.
Yeah, I mean, I truly, love this defense because it gives me the ability to kind of be everywhere. And, I always know each and every week, I'm probably going to be that red dot that opposing offenses are going to see. And in this defense, it's kind of really hard to know where I'm going. So that's definitely special. And with the collective players that we have now, it's definitely exciting. We're going to create, more one-on-ones and more opportunities for other guys to get to the QB or get tackled for losses, get interceptions. So I'm very excited, and like you said, it was a bunch of different things, and I just put my hats off to the coaching staff for creating this type of scheme that we have.
Did you like that better, wearing so many different hats as to playing more of a traditional safety role?
Oh, I love it. I love it. It gives me an opportunity to kind of be where, opposing number one receivers are, instead of just, being at free safety all day and knowing I'm going to be, in the post, or knowing I'm going to be here. That can give offenses opportunities to kind of stay away. And in this game, it's not like that. So I'm excited.
Can you explain to folks actually what you meant when you talked about being the red dot player, and also like maybe through that lens, what opposing quarterbacks had to deal with because of your multiplicity?
Yeah. Red dot meaning like, I'm a target. When guys are watching film on opposing teams, they're like, all right, I got to know where number 3 is because, he might be pressuring this way, or he might be, in this certain scheme to where we don't want him to be there. So kind of in that sense of being the targets for guys to kind of know where I am. And it makes it hard just because it's not the traditional, Mike here, free safety down here. We're showing different looks. We're showing a triangle look. We're showing, shell looks. And, I might be showing down left, and my other safety, Jalen Thompson, might be blitzing the opposite way, or vice versa. So it just gives us the opportunity to kind of dictate where the offenses are wanting to go.
Was the design of this like a collaboration with you and Nick? Because I have to think you were heavily involved in your role.
I mean, honestly, Nick and the coaching staff, they did a great job of kind of just watching the film each and every year and kind of evolving their defenses. They came through Philadelphia, and they did a lot of stuff in Philly. They also had a great D-line, great edge rushers, so they didn't do much stuff like that. But in this team, it gives the ability for the DBs and the linebackers to kind of not exactly show our hand to the offenses until the ball snapped. So add that with the great defensive line and some edge rushers, we're cooking with hot grease.
We'll get to that. We'll get about the fact that you hopefully will no longer be the best pass rusher on the team, in my opinion. But you mentioned Philadelphia. I mean, that's what was so shocking to me, Budda, because, when Gannon was hired and he brought Rallis with him from Philadelphia, I expected the defense to look a lot like Philadelphia. And the fronts are similar. It's a lot of 3-4, 5-1, but behind it, in Philly, for those who don't know, with Gannon, it was a lot of quarters, a lot of putting the shell on. But with you guys, what you played behind those fronts was totally different. Do you think that was just born out of like necessity and like, hey, our best players are our safeties? Like, why do you think they made that change?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think you're very smart at how you're going about that, what you said. You kind of just knowing your personnel and knowing, the positives and negatives, and just kind of just knowing your team, the best players playing, and that's all what Nick cares about, and that's all what, Jonathan Gannon cares about. So
a very kind answer. Humble answer, I guess. I mean, are you going to rush the passer a little bit less, you think, or?
Yeah, a little bit less, every now and again, a little bit less, but, I try to get my hands on the football. I haven't touched the football in a while. So just, at the end of the day, whatever Nick calls, I'm down for it, so very excited.
I wanted to ask you about him because he's a really young dude. I didn't know much about him when they hired him. I didn't really have like many opinions before watching the tape. He's kind of like a mad scientist out there. Like, tell us about him and what he did for this defense.
Yeah, like you said, I think he's a mad scientist. He's a young guy. When I was in college, he was in college, but I could tell he was probably one of those college players that was in the defensive room every day, just trying to learn defenses, trying to create different type of pressures and stuff like that. And of course, that's like a, Jonathan Gannon, little, sidekick. There's been multiple games throughout the season where we've practiced exactly what offenses are doing to us on game day. So that's very special to have a coach who kind of understands, at the end of the day, throughout the week, it's a guessing game. Who's going to do this? How are we going to do that? How are they going to do this? And 9 times out of 10 on Sundays, what we talked about throughout the week is exactly what goes on Sundays. So it helps.
I got to meet Jonathan Gannon for the first time at the combine this year. He is really energetic. That was my which he kind of got a little bit roasted, I feel like, when he was hired at the beginning for some of the videos of that. But my impression was like, oh, he is exactly who he seems. I was wondering like what your favorite story is about him from the last couple of years with him being your head coach.
Oh man, he's he like you said, he's that fiery guy all the time. That's just who he is. He cares about the game so much. Shoot, I mean, we can go as little as this OTAs. There was this certain situation that we were talking about, and he got loud, just got very loud at us, and then next thing you know, he takes a couple deep breaths, like, all right, I'm good now. All right, I'm good now. So it's like so much energy. We're like, oh, dang, like, what's going on? Then takes a couple deep breaths and he's like, all right, I'm good now. I'll go back to coaching. So that fiery guy that you see at the combine, that's who he is to a T.
We've been talking defense this whole time, but I do want to ask, like, you've been with Kyler for 4 years now. You're the only players really from that 2020 team. What would you say is the number one thing about Kyler Murray that people outside of the Cardinals building do not know?
Yeah, I mean, just the way that he goes about practice. He practices really hard. He dictates, he tells what receivers what to do, how to do it. You can see after each and every play, he's communicating to his guys okay, if you were supposed to sit in that zone, to sit in the zone, or if you were, in that man, keep going. He's kind of been in his bag this whole off season, doing no look throws and having, a great off season training camp. So K1's he's gonna run a little bit more, a little outside of the pocket, inside the pocket throws. He's going to kind of do it all, and he's going to get all his guys the rock.
Who would you say is the most underrated quarterback in the NFL?
No, I would say K1 just because, we haven't had a lot of national games and, people kind of see him as a short guy, but this guy can make all the throws inside the pocket, outside the pocket, and he's quick. You see it on tape. He's outrunning everybody all the time. Mm-hmm. Even like that 49ers game where in San Fran, he points up to the touchdown, 40, 50 yards away, knowing he was going to score. I haven't seen a QB do that. So it's definitely exciting, but it's cool to just lay under the weeds and have him be that underrated guy and just kind of show who he is this year and, throughout the whole season.
Budda Baker, excited to watch the Cardinals defense. Everybody, my PSA, watch the Cardinals defense. It is worth your time, and especially watch for this guy. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you. Seattle's finest. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. DBU.